Mr. Alessi, we need to enlarge this.
Okay, Your Honor. Mr. Wolf, can you enlarge that pursuant to the judge's order? Is that sufficient, Your Honor?
If you can make it as large as possible for the jurors, please, even if you have to do smaller segments.
If we have to, Mr. Wolf, knock off the final right-hand column, that's insignificant. There you go.
All right, that's better. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. So I want to now go to the last one for this Exhibit 42. It's reading from left to right, 1229.44, 1229.51, incoming call duration at seconds from Jen McCabe. Again, it restates duration 8 seconds.
Correct.
Given that it's an incoming call, you can conclude that that was answered, correct?
Correct.
Now, if we could go back down and focusing on just the first three by way of example, Mr. Wolf, do just as Her Honor has requested, enlarge it as large as possible. Those three, after the first three, yep, starting there, just take the first three by way of example. All right. Mr. Wiffin, you should feel free to look at the hard copy Exhibit 42 if that's more helpful to you. But what I want to do is to focus on start time 12:33:35, reading across activity, incoming call, unanswered, and then to the right, Karen Reed. Do you see that, sir?
I do.
And do you see the same types of entries for 3409 and 3438?
I do.
And those calls are unanswered, correct?
Correct.
So in contrast to the, and now Mr. Walker, we can go back to the chart, trying to capture 6 and enlarge those one last time. Thank you. So in the first one at 1436 and then skipping one to 2944, those are answered, but then starting excuse me, at 3335 and 3409, those are unanswered, correct?
Correct.
You can take that down, Mr. Wolf. Thank you. We have a moment, Your Honor, to switch topics. Mr. Wiffin, when did you start working on this case? What was the date, approximate date?
On this case or on this exhibit?
On this case.
Approximately September 2023.
So over a year and a half?
Correct.
How many times have you been in Norfolk County?
This is my second time.
So you were here once previously?
Correct.
Do you recall yesterday discussing what you had done with an iPhone, driving around and then moving it with your hand?
Correct. Yes.
In the year and a half that you've been on this case, did you ever take an iPhone and do the same activity on the route that you were discussing yesterday between 34 Fairview and One Meadows?
I actually did it on Sunday night.
I'm sorry?
I did it 2 days ago on Sunday night.
And with regard to your time on this case, what was the results of that?
I object, Your Honor. I'll need to be heard briefly.
I'm sorry?
I object. I need to be heard briefly.
Okay. Come on over, please.
May I, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Wiffin, I am now going to proceed to a different topic.
Okay.
Do you recall discussing the Google search, how long to die in the cold?
I do.
And you discussed that in your direct testimony, correct?
I did.
You were a police officer for years before getting into the data forensic analysis of cell phones, correct?
Correct.
You were a response officer of the South Yorkshire Police from 2004 to 2009.
Correct.
You continued policing with the Calgary Police, working patrol, correct?
Correct.
You work frequently with law enforcement.
I do.
Indeed, law enforcement is the predominance of your work, correct?
Probably about 80% of the work, yes.
What percent?
About 80%.
80?
80.
Your work is used in investigations for law enforcement, correct?
Sometimes, yes.
In your area of work, you use and apply various forensic methods that are extracted, that data is extracted from a cell phone, correct?
Correct.
And you have various forensic methods to analyze that data, correct?
Correct.
And that data that you analyze is often used by law enforcement in their investigations, right?
It can be, yes.
It can be, but it also is, from your experience, correct?
I'm sorry, are we talking about my actual analysis or analysis that's created by the tools that me and Cellebrite create?
Your analysis.
Okay, my analysis is typically used in investigations, yes.
So it's typically, your analysis is typically used by law enforcement.
On the cases I work, yes.
Right. And you know that is going to be the case oftentimes when you're doing your analysis, correct?
Correct.
And forensic software is used to gain access to people's devices, correct?
Correct.
Such as cell phones, right?
Correct.
So, and there's something called an extraction process from a cell phone that you discussed in your direct testimony.
Yes.
Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I want to cover, because it would be covering old ground, but I want to cover some of it.
Okay.
It's important, is it not, that the extraction process on a cell phone be performed correctly.
It is, yes.
And that's so that the data that's extracted from a cell phone is complete, correct?
Correct.
So that the data is correct,
Correct.
and so that the data is reliable.
Correct.
And data forensic examiners and people in your area of work need to ensure that the extraction file has not been tampered with, correct?
Correct.
Because if an extraction file has the possibility of tampering, then the information and data from it can be unreliable, correct?
Correct.
And there's a generally accepted methodology for how to perform an extraction of data from a cell phone, correct?
Typically, yes.
One of the key ways to determine whether the data extracted from a cell phone is valid and has integrity is to evaluate whether the extraction process created what is called a hash value, correct?
Correct.
And a synonym for a hash value is a hash signature, correct?
Correct.
And a hash value or hash signature, I'm just going to use hash value. Is that acceptable to you?
I'm fine with that.
Thank you. So a hash value is a unique and usually consists of a long string of numbers and letters that's generated from the data file from a cell phone using a computer algorithm, right?
Correct.
And one of the computer algorithms is Shaw SHA 256, right?
Correct.
And is it a fair analogy to state that a hash value can be thought of as fingerprint for a data file from a cell phone?
Yes.
And is it also a rough analogy that a hash value can function like the seal on a milk container? In other words, if you open the milk container and the seal's broken, that the same analogy can be provided that if you don't have a valid hash value, then there is a question with regard to the contents of a cell phone, just as there might be concern about contents of a milk carton. Is that a fair general analogy?
Yeah, if the hash doesn't match, then something has changed in the data.
So if the hash doesn't match or you can't determine a valid hash file, it's sort of like opening up a milk container and that seal cap is off, correct?
Okay, I'll accept that.
Thank you. Now, if a data file is altered in any way, the hash algorithm is going to produce a different letter in numeric string than the previous hash value for that same alleged data, correct?
Correct.
So that alpha numeric number is important because it can, if it's different, then it means something happened to that data, correct?
Correct.
And isn't it important for examiners, anybody in data forensics, to know whether or not the data they're looking at has a valid hash value?
It would depend, in my opinion, on the origin of the data.
But you would agree that it's much better to have a valid hash value for data than not, correct?
I'd like to see the hash value match, yes.
You would like to see the hash value matching,
Yes.
correct? Now, once data from an iPhone is properly extracted and you get a hash value, then the examiners of the data seek to pass and decode the data to try and make some sense of the data in a more user-friendly format so that a report can be created for investigators, correct?
Correct.
Do you recall preparing a report for the iPhone belonging to Jen McCabe dated December 2024?
I do, yes.
And in that report, you discussed your views of a Google search of House Long to Die in the Cold, correct?
Correct.
And in that report, you rendered various conclusions about that Google search, correct?
Correct.
And you rendered various conclusions about what is called a timestamp.
Correct.
And the timestamp that was in question was 2:27:40 a.m. on January 29th on Jen McCabe's phone, correct?
Correct.
And the question that you were looking at is that timestamp that appeared in the data, that timestamp of 2:27:40 a.m., whether that belonged to the Google search, "How long to die in the cold," correct?
Correct.
And you testified yesterday with regard to that very issue, correct?
Correct.
Now, in your report of December 2024, you discussed the hash value of that cell phone, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yesterday, in your direct testimony, you didn't mention anything about the hash value with regard to Jen McCabe's phone, did you?
Not in my testimony, no.
The answer is no, correct?
No.
However, isn't it correct that in your report of December 2024, you had an issue with the hash value from the data from that phone?
I didn't have an issue with the hash value at all, no.
So you didn't note that it was not possible with the gray key extraction, as the PDF containing the extraction has its value, that it was unsigned? That was not an issue in your report?
The hash value matches, but because I didn't do the extraction, I'm unable to actually validate that was an original hash and hadn't been modified.
Exactly. So you didn't do the extraction, but you couldn't validate the hash value, could you?
No.
So you couldn't determine whether or not any of the data on that cell phone of Jen McCabe had been tampered with, correct?
I take a holistic view of the data and try to find anomalies and didn't see any that raised any flags.
That wasn't my question, sir.
Okay.
I'll try it a different way. You concluded that the hash value was unsigned, correct?
Correct. They were always unsigned. Okay, apologies.
You concluded that the hash value was unsigned, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. And you went on, did you not, in your report, to say that this hash value could be used as a suggestion of authentication, but cannot be guaranteed 100%, correct?
Correct.
Did you discuss any of that doubt, that suggestion of authentication but can't be guaranteed 100% at all in your direct testimony yesterday?
I didn't know.
And again, hash values are very important concepts for data forensic examiners, correct?
For integrity, yes.
Do you know the chain of custody of Jen McCabe's iPhone?
I don't, no.
So you don't know the chain of custody of her iPhone. You have an unsigned hash value, and you can't guarantee the hash value authentication, correct?
No.
The objection's overruled.
Not from the hash value, no.
Go back to the 22740 timestamp and the question of whether that timestamp is associated with a Google search, how long to die in the cold. You understand there is a dispute as to whether that search was performed at 2:27:40 a.m., as the timestamp states, or whether that was performed later in the morning, say around 6:23 a.m., correct?
Correct.
You understand there's a dispute.
Yes.
And do you understand that the defense asserts that that timestamp means what it says, the Google search occurred at 2:27:40 a.m.?
Thank you.
I'm going to allow it. Do you understand that?
I do.
I didn't hear your answer, sir.
I understand.
You understand that?
Yes.
So there are various data forensic tools, are there not, to evaluate what is called an artifact, this timestamp, correct?
Correct.
And those data forensic tools include Cellebrite tools, your company's tools?
Yes.
And some of those Cellebrite tools are called Physical Analyzer.
Correct.
And then you have another tool, I believe, called Insights.
Insights is a suite that includes Physical Analyzer.
Okay.
But yes.
So it's Insights is a
It's
suite.
essentially the same tool.
Essentially the same tool. So does Insight, well, essentially, but they're two different tools, correct?
They're two different versions of the same tool.
Thank you. Two different versions of the same tool.
Yes.
But there are other tools from other companies, are there not, sir?
There are.
And a competitor of Cellebrite that can be used to analyze that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp and to potentially resolve that dispute of whether the Google search "How long to die in the cold" occurred at 2:27:40 a.m. or later at 6:23 or so a.m. There's other companies and tools that can be used for that, correct?
Correct.
And isn't one of the companies that can be used a competitor of Cellebrite called Magnet Forensics?
Correct.
And they have a tool called Axiom, A-X-I-O-M, that evaluates questions such as this, correct?
They do.
And is Magnet Forensics a reputable company?
They are.
Am I correct that yesterday you essentially said that as of today, no Cellebrite tool, no Insight suite such as Physical Analyzer, today shows that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp?
Correct. If you use any version from the last approximately year, that timestamp won't show up.
It won't show up as you sit here today.
Correct.
But that's not always been the case
Correct.
with regard to Cellebrite forensic tools, correct?
Correct.
As a matter of fact, in the first proceeding in this case, in June of 2024, when you testified under oath, the situation with the forensic tools was Cellebrite Forensics Insights did not show the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, but another version of Physical Analyzer did show it, correct?
Correct.
In that second program, that second tool, Physical Analyzer, not only showed it at 2:27:40 a.m., but it showed it as a deleted state, correct?
It's a deleted record, yes.
A deleted record.
Yes.
Did you mention that yesterday in your direct testimony?
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so?
No, we changed it since then.
Exactly. You changed it since then.
Yes.
Your company removed it
Yes.
after the first trial.
Before the first trial.
Well, you removed it from one tool before the first trial, but you didn't remove it from the other Physical Analyzer program, did you?
Up until the following version was released.
No, I'm talking about the time of trial when you were testifying.
I appreciate that. There's some complexities with how we released the software, which resulted in one being released several weeks later and one being released several weeks earlier.
At the time of trial,
Yes.
last year in June, when you were testifying under oath, one of the Cellebrite tools showed the timestamp of 2:27:40 a.m., correct?
Correct.
But that timestamp doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist today, does it?
Correct.
Cellebrite removed it.
Yes.
All right,
You
could
mentioned-
could I see Counsel at sidebar for just a minute,
Yes, Your Honor.
please? Go ahead,
So-
Mr. Leslie.
Thank you, Your Honor. So with regard to the first proceeding, there was one Cellebrite forensic tool that still showed the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp,
Correct.
and it was shown in a deleted state.
The record was deleted, yes.
The record was deleted. And then after that, Cellebrite outright removed the timestamp from so none of its programs had it. Correct?
Again, if I could explain a little bit about how it works.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
If you could just respond to my question. Is that correct?
The timestamp's been removed, yes.
However, the competitor of Cellebrite that we just talked about, Magnet Forensics Axiom,
Yes.
that program at the first proceeding showed the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, correct?
Correct.
And as a matter of fact, as you sit here today, the Magnet Forensics program, Axiom, still shows the 2:27:04 a.m. timestamp, correct?
As far as I know, yes.
And Magnet Forensics Axiom is a reputable company, correct?
Correct.
Cellebrite removed that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, which is in a deleted state, in response to issues raised in the first proceeding, correct?
It was changed because of the research that I did, and that was verified by the forensic research group.
But the issue arose because of what had come up in the first proceeding, correct?
In the first investigation prior to the proceeding, yes.
In the first investigation in this case, correct?
Yes.
So Cellebrite, after the first proceeding, after the investigation, just outright went and removed the timestamp.
It's not unusual to change the
I
coding.
didn't ask if it, I just asked whether
Yeah,
they
we removed it.
But Magnet Forensic Axiom still shows that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, right?
Again, they refer to it differently, which is why they can
But
do
they
that.
still show it.
They do still show it.
Can you just finish the answer?
So,
Sorry. Just let him finish the answer. Is that what you said, Mr. Mayor?
my apologies, but I'm having trouble hearing, but I'll pause more just to make sure you're done. In that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp, the dispute is whether it's associated with the search "House Long to Die in the Cold," correct?
Correct.
Let's talk a little bit more about the first proceeding in this case. In terms of your testimony under oath in that first proceeding, do you recall stating that it was your opinion as to whether that 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp was associated or not with the Google search "House Long to Die in the Cold"?
I believe so.
Right, so you called it your opinion.
Yes,
It-
probably.
you didn't describe it as a fact, you described it as your opinion, correct?
Correct.
Because you realize that there are other fair interpretations of that timestamp and when the Google search occurred, correct?
I think even if I believe it's a fact, it's my opinion.
Right, so it's your opinion.
Yes.
So you also, do you recall stating that there's plenty of other evidence on that extraction that shows what activity was occurring at 2:27:40? You recall that?
Correct.
And you use the word evidence, correct?
Correct.
But that evidence on the Cellebrite program is now gone, correct?
No,
It's not gone?
it's not gone.
So the 2:27:40 timestamp still exists in Cellebrite programs?
Sorry, are we talking about the additional evidence that shows what
Oh, no.
happened at 2:27:40?
No, I'm just asking whether.
Okay.
I thought we had that clear, but I thought, is the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp show up on any Cellebrite program as you sit here today?
The decoded value does not show a timestamp for
Thank you.
that artifact.
Sir, does your work include shaping how examiners will see the data when they open it?
Yes.
So you shape how the data is going to be, correct?
Yes, we have
Yes?
ways to create the data so it's usable. Yes.
So the answer is
shape it.
yes,
Yes.
you shape the data.
Yes.
These various forensic tools, Cellebrite, Insight Suite, including Physical Analyzer, Magnetic Forensics Axiom, these are all tools, and we know that no one has access to the Apple source code on iPhones, correct?
Correct.
And the best source of information about what may be happening inside of an Apple iPhone would be if one could get the source code and look into the source codes to see what's actually happening, correct?
Correct.
So what happens is, in data forensics, because Apple considers it proprietary and people can't access the source code, there's these various data forensic tools that in some ways try to serve as a surrogate, given the fact that there's no access to source code, correct?
Correct. That's fair.
So the best information would come from the Apple source code, but nobody has access to that, or few people do. Therefore, these other forensic tools are used.
Correct.
So sometimes examiners have to give opinions, like you give, because you don't have access to the source code, correct?
Correct.
So it's your opinion, oftentimes, with regard to ultimate conclusion.
Based on research and testing. But yes,
Not
it's an opinion.
100% absolute certainty, because you don't have access to the source code, correct?
Correct.
You have a moment, Your Honor, to switch topics, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Before I do switch topics, a couple points on the 2:27:40 timestamp, if I may, Mr. Wiffin. The Google search in question associated with that timestamp, the dispute over that, is house long to die in the cold, correct?
Correct.
And you understand, sir, do you understand the significance if Jen McCabe made that Google search, house long to die in the cold, at 2:27:40 a.m. instead of 6:23 a.m.? Do you understand the significance of that?
Of course.
Sustain.
He said yes, Your Honor.
I'm sorry?
I said sustained.
Oh, thank you, Anna. I didn't hear that.
Jurors, strike any answer that may have come.
What do you understand to be the significance of the dispute over 22740 timestamp?
Sustained.
Mr. Wiffin, with regard to the 22740 AM timestamp, have you looked at any forensic tools to answer that question other than Cellebrite tools and your tool Ardex?
I've used Axiom as well.
So you used Axiom, and so did you therefore see that that 22740 AM timestamp still appeared?
Yes.
Did you discuss that with the jury yesterday, that you analyzed the Axiom program and that 22740 AM timestamp still appears?
I didn't, no.
You did not.
I did not.
Could we please, with the court's permission, put the PowerPoint presentation back up and go to deck 26? Mr. Wiffin, does an iPhone discriminate between whether it's in a car, a bus, a bicycle, or walking?
It can, but I don't have the research on that.
Right. So as you sit here today, you can't say that an iPhone can tell the difference between a car, a bus, bicycle, or walking, correct?
The iPhone can, but I haven't researched that data fully enough to understand it forensically.
So as you
I
sit here,
can't, but
you
the phone
can't.
can.
Does an iPhone merely register movement? Let me rephrase that. Does an iPhone register movement?
It does.
Do you recall yesterday discussing movement at a speed of about 1.4 miles per hour at 12:24:37 a.m. on
Yes.
January 29th, 2022?
I do.
A person walking at a normal to even a slow pace can walk at approximately 1.4 miles per hour. Is that correct?
It sounds reasonable.
And does it sound reasonable that a normal speed of walking is between 2 and 4 miles per hour?
Reasonable.
Switching topics, Your Honor, if I could have a moment. You can take that. Okay, thank you. When you were examining Jennifer McCabe's phone, you used an operating system called iOS 14, correct?
That's one of the versions of iOS I used, yes.
That was one of the versions.
Yes.
Do you understand that Jen McCabe's phone was actually using iOS version 15?
Yes, I do. 15.2.1.
15.2?
2.1.
Thank you. And do you recall saying, with regard to iOS 15.1, etc., that the iOS operating system, your words, had fundamentally changed, correct?
Correct.
Now, with regard to, we're back to Jen McCabe's phone, we're back to 2740, the issue of deletions. You stated yesterday that that deletion occurred after January 31 of 2022, is that correct?
Correct.
But you couldn't determine how that deletion occurred with certainty, correct?
Correct.
And you gave three possibilities that you analyzed, correct?
3 or 4, yes.
3 or 4. And one of them was deleted by user, correct?
Correct.
Another one was that the search occurred but never loaded.
That would be the reason that there was no data found in the history.db file.
But that was another of the 3 or 4 reasons, correct?
That wouldn't cause the deletion of the record,
Right,
necessarily.
Right. And then you you discussed those possibilities, but you can't state with certainty how that deletion occurred, can you?
Correct.
You have doubts about how it occurred, is that fair?
Yeah, I have an idea how it occurred, but I can't prove
You had,
it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
No, please finish. I want to make sure you finish.
I have an idea of how it occurred, but I've not been able to replicate it, so my idea is unsubstantiated.
So is it fair to say you have some doubt
Yes.
about how the deletion occurs?
That's fair.
And you believe your doubt is reasonable
Yes.
under the circumstances?
Yes.
Your Honor, that is the extent of my questions of the witness at this time.
Okay. Mr. Brennan?
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As a forensic analyst, do you study data?
I do.
Do you consider it a science?
I do.
Are you a criminal investigator like a police officer in your present role?
Not anymore.
Are you a detective in your present role helping aid one side or another in an investigation?
I'm not, no.
At some point, you and I spoke about reviewing phones.
We did.
You had begun your whole process in some of this work before you had met me.
Correct.
And I'd asked you to look at Mr. O'Keefe's phone.
Correct?
Did I ever tell you what you should look for?
No.
Did I ever tell you what I wanted to see or what I wanted the results to be?
No.
Did I ever share with you parts of the investigation that had nothing to do with your actual data analysis?
No.
Would it be inappropriate or not helpful for an advocate to provide you information that might taint or influence your thinking when you're looking at data in a case?
Objection, Your Honor.
100% it would be problematic.
When I asked you to look at data in this case, did I ever express any opinion whatsoever that I cared, one way or another, what your results would find?
No.
Did I ever attempt to shape or influence your process by offering you information that had nothing to do with your assessment of data?
No.
And so as a scientist, what a legal investigator or an advocate for either side thinks, is that relevant to you?
No.
The data is the data?
The data is the data. I can explain my opinions on the data.
The science is the science?
The science is the science.
That's sustained. Watch the form.
Now, counsel showed you some parts of your report regarding John O'Keefe's cell phone, didn't he?
Yes.
You saw select pages from that report?
Correct.
A few pages you were asked about?
Yes.
But you wrote an entire report, didn't you?
I did.
And do you think that your entire report puts into perspective some of those select pages that you were shown?
Definitely, yes.
You know, I move to introduce Mr. Wiffin's entire report.
May we approach your eyes?
Okay.
Do you still have your report with you, Mr. Wiffin?
I do, yes.
Okay.
Let's start with questions that counsel asked you about the battery. When you were trying to determine how the battery worked, you shared with the jury that you did certain testing.
Correct.
What was the purpose of that testing?
To make sure that the battery temperature sensor would be affected by environmental temperatures, such as being in the freezer, such as being outside, being brought back indoors, and to make sure that the fall and rise of the temperature sensor, at least the pattern would match the expected pattern and would match the thermometer that was alongside it.
When you put the batteries or the phone in the freezers, did it matter what the temperature of the freezer was when you put it in it?
I didn't believe it did.
What was the purpose, again, of putting it in the freezer?
Just to remove the device from a warm environment, which was outside of the freezer, placing it inside the cold environment of the freezer and just seeing how the temperature dropped.
As you mentioned, you look at data through science, correct?
Correct.
And so, did anybody ever share with you the important points of the decrease in temperature of the cell phone battery to try to influence your results?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow it.
I'm sorry, could you
Did
rephrase?
anybody try to tell you important points of the evening on January 29th, 2022 in an attempt to influence your studies on the fact that a battery or a phone, when it gets colder, the battery temperature decreases?
No.
So when you developed the graph of the battery temperature and you followed the progress of that temperature declining through the night, was there any other scope or focus of yours other than to simply track the data?
Just tracking the data.
Similarly, when you looked at healthcare data, were you asked to try to see if the healthcare data could fit a certain theory or argument?
No, I was not.
You were looking at the healthcare data. Were you looking at it independently?
I was.
Now, it's not your opinion, or you're not taking a position what the meaning of that data matching up is, are you?
No.
No one's asked you to give an opinion about the coordination of data, have they?
No.
So if the data just coordinates on its own, that has nothing to do with your opinion.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustain it as to
You mentioned when you put a cell phone in a colder environment, like a freezer, you noted that the temperature goes down.
Correct.
Do your studies also show that when the cell phone is taken out of a certain temperature and put in an increased temperature, the cell phone battery temperature goes up?
It does.
Do you have available for the screen the battery graph that we had on your PowerPoint?
I do. 2 seconds.
If you could go back one to where it's just the chart, please. And if you could enlarge it, we'll start near the top.
2 seconds.
Okay. At 12:20:43 on January 28, 2023, the battery temperature is 77 degrees.
I'm sorry, that's 8:43 p.m.
That's
all right?
8:43 p.m.?
Yes, the first record.
77 degrees?
Yes.
And if we look down to the last box on January 28, 2023,
Yes.
so at 23:28, that's 12:23:28?
Objection, Your Honor. When you approach, please.
Okay.
I'm going to ask. Mr. Wiffin, I'm going to ask you to start at 12:13 on January 29th, 2022. Battery temperature 82 degrees.
Yes.
And now you are also tracking healthcare data, weren't you?
Correct.
You are also tracking location information.
Correct.
At 12:22, the battery temperature is 77 degrees Fahrenheit.
Correct.
And during that time, 12:22, that is the time with the location data where we see Mr. O'Keefe's car traveling near Cedarbrook, isn't it?
Objection, Your Honor.
The form sustained.
And at 12:22 on January 29, 2022, where does the location data show Mr. O'Keefe's phone in progress?
It's around Oakdale Road, I believe.
And the travel that you're noting, is that consistent given the speed of being within a car?
I believe so.
And do you know whether or not that car had heat on?
I've got no idea.
You have healthcare data that the phone moves for a 20-second period, right?
I believe so,
And
yes.
That is after the Waze information stops.
Correct.
Objection, Your Honor.
So you have to watch the form. I know it's hard to orient. You have to watch the form.
In your PowerPoint presentation, you are tracking the Waze information, aren't you?
I am, yes.
And at some point that switches to more local location data?
Again, Waze is not recording the location data. Waze is requesting location data from Apple's location services, and location services is doing the recording of the location data.
So if we're following the phone through Waze, at 12:24:25, is it in the car moving at 16.6 miles per hour?
According to the data, yes.
And at 12:24:26, according to the data, is it still in a car moving at 17 miles per hour?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained as to forms.
Can you pull up your PowerPoint, and we'll start at 12:24:25. We can show the jury the progress of that phone.
Okay.
And at 12:24:25, how fast is Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone moving?
The data on the device says that it was moving at around 16.6 miles per hour.
Next page, 24:26.
17 miles per hour.
Next page, 24:27.
15.9 miles per hour.
Next page, 24:28.
14.5 miles per hour.
24:29.
12.1 miles per hour.
24:30.
11.5 miles per hour.
24:31.
10.4 miles per hour.
24:32.
8.9 miles per hour.
24:33.
7 miles per hour.
24:34.
5.2 miles per hour.
24:35.
3.5 miles per hour.
24:36.
3.2 miles per hour.
24:37.
1.4 miles per hour.
And 24:38.
0 miles per hour or 0 meters per second.
And at 24:38, that phone is stopped near the flagpole?
I would say so, yes.
Then the location data gets more broad.
It does.
There is no movement at that time after the car stops. Is there any movement when the car stops at 24:38, between 24:38 and 24:30? Is there any movement indicated on the healthcare data?
Not from the health data, no.
At 12:31:57, does the phone demonstrate any movement?
If I may just look back at my
Of
report,
course,
just to
please.
recall. What time was that, sorry?
12:31:57.
Yes, around 12:31, 56 or 57 is the start of the health event, 36 steps.
How long? How many seconds does that phone move for?
20 seconds.
12:31:56 to 12:32:16.
Correct.
And is that the only time that the phone moves from the point it stops at the flagpole until the next morning?
Correct.
The only time.
Correct.
12:31:56 to 12:32:16.
Yes.
And when that phone moves, you can't tell if it's walking a straight line or in a circle.
Correct.
You don't know if the phone is pacing back and forth.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained is to form.
Can you tell how far a phone moves from its origin, from its original point when you're counting steps?
No. iOS creates the calculation, number of steps times the person's gait, and provides the 25.4 meters value.
At 12:32:16, when that phone stops moving, John O'Keefe's phone stops moving, do you know the next time it moves again?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow it.
It's approximately 6:15.
Now, less than 5 minutes later, 12:37, that battery in that cell phone gets another temperature reading, doesn't it?
It does.
Does it go up?
It goes down.
And it goes down to what degrees?
72 degrees.
And over the next 8 minutes, does that temperature even or go up?
At 43 minutes past, there was another reading of 66 Fahrenheit.
And then at 12:53, that's about, what, 21 minutes or so after that phone stops moving? What's the temperature?
I'm sorry, at 12:53?
Yes.
Oh, 61 Fahrenheit.
61 degrees?
Yes.
And over the next 14 minutes, does it drop again?
It does. It drops to 55 degrees at 1:07.
And at 1:36 a.m. that morning,
It's down to 50 degrees.
and this health data shows that that phone hasn't moved. But does
Correct.
this healthcare data show that this phone hasn't moved since
There's
12/32/16?
no more steps were recorded.
Now, you had studies where you put the phone in a freezer.
Correct.
When you put the phone in the freezer, did you wrap it in anything?
I didn't know.
Did you use any type of heat source that would slow down the process of the temperature dropping?
No.
Let me ask you a hypothetical. If a person, a human, was lying prone on a cell phone outside and had a body temperature directly touching the phone, in your opinion, could that slow the process of the temperature decreasing as compared to just simply putting a phone in a freezer?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
When you put the phone in the freezer, did you wrap it in any warmth,
No.
any clothing?
Nothing at all.
Now, you don't know the temperature, but you said there was a blizzard outside.
That's my understanding, yes.
At 6:06 a.m., is there a change in the battery temperature of John O'Keefe's phone?
Yes, the temperature has dropped to 43 degrees Fahrenheit.
So there's a 7-degree drop in temperature at 6:06.
Correct.
Were you shared any of the facts or information that has nothing to do with data and science? Were you shared any facts or information about what may have occurred to that cell phone and its exposure to colder air that morning, minutes prior to 6:06 a.m.?
I may have heard that around that time is when John was found.
Objection, Your Honor. Move to strike.
Oh, so could you answer the question, yes or no, that Mr. Brennan asked you? Did anybody share information with you about that, sir?
Nobody shared it with me, no.
If the phone was in an environment and it was exposed to further colder air or drop in temperature, could it register a reading?
I'm sorry, can you just ask that again?
Sure. Let me ask a different question. The phone drops to 43 degrees, John's phone at 6:06. 6:14, is there another change with this phone dropping in temperature?
Yes, it drops to 37 Fahrenheit.
Do you know what, if anything, happened as far as the environment that phone was exposed to seconds before 6:14?
I don't know.
Do you know if that phone at 6:15:01 was then placed in a warmer environment like a pocket or a car? Do you
I
know?
have no idea.
But your data shows at 6:35 there's an increase in temperature,
Correct.
doesn't it?
It does.
So at 6:14 you don't know if there's been any increased exposure, do you?
No, I know that according to the battery temperature, it's increased, but I don't know the reason for that.
Now, if you look at the battery temperature at 6:06 a.m., it's 43 degrees.
Yes.
That's a change in temperature, isn't it?
Objection, Your Honor.
Is that a change in temperature from 136?
It is.
Looking at your healthcare data, is there something happening relative to the phone at 6:04 to 6:11?
There is, that is 432 steps were recorded at that time.
Can a phone record steps if it's being moved back and forth?
It may record some. It's difficult to say how many would be misunderstood as being steps taken.
If you're shaking an object that moves the phone violently, could it record steps?
Again, potentially it could record some, but it's not a consistent enough pattern of movement for it to be recorded as lots of steps.
Now at 6:14, the temperature is 37 degrees, and you just offered us that by 6:35, over the next 21 minutes, the degrees goes up by 6 degrees.
Correct.
You don't know what was happening with that phone at 6:15:01, do you?
I don't.
I'll allow it. Do you know?
I don't know. No.
Next question.
But what you do know is this healthcare data at 6:15:14,
Correct.
and that demonstrates what?
At 6:15:14, it was the start of 180 steps.
So the phone at 6:15:14 is again moving.
Correct.
And after that starts moving wherever the phone may go, it starts getting warmer temperature?
Correct.
Now, you shared with us location data, and you explained the difference between ways and other types of location data. I had asked you an opinion about where the phone was located, based just on location data, nothing else. And when I asked you that opinion, I didn't ask you to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, did I?
I don't recall.
I asked you if it was consistent
Yes.
with being near the flagpole the entire night.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Based on location data alone, are you offering an opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty where that phone was?
It's difficult to say with a reasonable degree of certainty based on the randomness of the location data.
I'm going to ask you to keep your voice up, Mr. Wiffin.
Apologies.
Could we turn the AC off, please? Thank you.
No, it's difficult to give an answer based to a high degree of scientific certainty based on the sporadic nature of the records that night.
Based on the data you have, just on location data alone, is that location data consistent with that phone being near the flagpole area from midnight until 6:15 the next morning?
It is, yes.
There's also information, because the broadness, that it could have been somewhere else.
Correct.
Yet it is consistent.
It is.
You didn't just rely on location data for your opinion, though.
I didn't know.
Objection, Your Honor.
Watch the form, Mr. Brennan.
Yeah.
Sustained.
Did you rely just on location data for your opinion?
No, I did not.
Did you also consider the health data?
I did.
And did you also consider the battery temperature?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
In addition to location data, what are the other things you considered, in your opinion, to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, that that phone was at the flagpole the entire night from 12:30 until 6 the next morning?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow that.
It was based on the location data that recorded high accuracy, based on the health data that showed when the device moved and how far, based on the battery temperature information, and based on the Doppler face detection information.
Let me ask you some more questions about the health data. You were shown pieces of information on examination. You told us that that health data, well, the phone was it your opinion the phone was in the car until it stopped at the flagpole?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
At 12:31:56 and 12:32:16, does the data show that is the time that the phone was moving?
At what time, sorry?
12:31:56 to 12:32:16.
And sorry, the rest of the question was?
Does that demonstrate movement of the phone at that time?
Yes, it did.
You shared that you can't tell the direction or the distance of steps.
Objection, Your Honor.
If,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, please.
Pardon me.
If that phone moved from the flagpole in a straight line away from the flagpole, like, for example, towards the house, wouldn't it have to move again before 6:04 to get back to the flagpole?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow it.
I would presume so.
All right, you asking me to strike that, Mr.
Yes, Your
Listy?
Honor.
I'm going to strike that.
Does health data register when a phone moves?
It does.
I'll ask you some more detailed questions about your research into a phone that's been attributed to Jennifer McCabe. You looked at one piece of your report on the screen, and that was a phone call register.
Yes.
Could you turn to that phone call register, please?
What are we doing with the slide that's up there, Mr. Brennan?
I would like to change it to the phone call register if possible.
Oh, it's not me.
I believe it's Exhibit 42. If you, it's a. Do you have the report that you could put on the screen regarding
Oh, I
the
don't
phone call
have.
register?
I don't have this one that was shared as
Okay.
Exhibit 42.
This is now marked as Exhibit 42. In the phone call register, you noted that there was a call at 12:14:36.
Yes.
Have you found it? Is that you?
This is not me. No.
Oh,
I think it's Ms. Gilman.
thank you, Ms. Gilman. Could you enlarge that, please?
Which portion of it?
Up the top part. The first 4 or 5 calls. Thank you.
And we need it larger, Ms. Gilman, please. All right, that's
Thank you.
better, thank you.
On examination, you read that at 12:14:36, there was a phone call incoming
Yes.
that appeared to be from Jennifer McCabe.
Correct.
At 12:14:36, the location information is the John O'Keefe's cell phone at Fairview by that point?
Objection, Your Honor.
So the question, is it?
Yes, is it?
No.
And then at 12:18:47, there's another call, and again from Jen McCabe.
That's an outgoing call to Jen McCabe.
It's an outgoing call to Jennifer McCabe.
Yes.
12:18:47, the location information, does that place Mr. O'Keefe's cell phone at Fairview?
No, it does not.
Then at 12:29:44, there's an 8-second call that you said you believe is answered. Do you know if there was any conversation in that call?
No way to know if there's any conversation.
And at 12:29:44, does the location information place John O'Keefe's cell phone somewhere
It does at Fairview Road.
at the flagpole?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor.
Strike, I'll strike that.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, there is not a call. Well, let me ask you the next call. What time is the next call?
33 minutes and 35 seconds after midnight.
And who's that call from?
From Karen Reed.
Is that before or after John O'Keefe's health data stops?
After.
At 12:37, you offered us that the cell phone battery's temperature is decreasing.
Yes.
How many calls have been made from the defendant to John O'Keefe by the time that cell phone battery starts dropping in temperature?
7.
I want to turn now to some questions about your analysis of Ms. McCabe's phone. You were asked about hash values, a way of trying to confirm the integrity of the data on a extraction.
Yes.
When forensic analysts look at phones, do you sometimes get to actually see the phone?
Yes.
Do you sometimes have to use an extraction, a copy of the phone?
Yes.
Is it important to try to look and research or search the item to determine whether or not there's been any tampering?
Yes.
You were asked if hash values is one way to do that.
I was.
And you have shown or read part of your report about hash values.
Yes.
There's a second part to that, isn't there?
There is.
You didn't get a chance to share the second part, did you?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
In this case, there was a hash value, wasn't there?
There was.
Now, just so we can understand simply, how is a hash value created during the extraction process? What does that mean in very, very simple terms?
Yeah. At the end of the extraction, an algorithm is run on every piece of, every byte of data within the extraction, and it comes out with a value at the end. The idea is that if any of that data ever changes, be it through user interaction or through corruption of data in how it was stored, then that value will change at the end.
You mentioned Gray Key. Is that a software, hardware that makes the copy of the phone?
It's a piece of hardware and includes software.
How commonly is Gray Key used in the industry?
It's very common.
Did I hear you say that with Gray Key, the hash value is never authenticated?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained is to fall.
Does Gray Key authenticate the hash value?
The hash value is placed inside a PDF which is not signed.
And is that common or typical in the industry?
That is the way that Gray Key do it.
Was there anything anomaly or untoward or different about the way this one was done?
No.
Did the hash value from the Gray Key extraction match the hash value?
It did.
Anything irregular whatsoever about it?
No, not that I could see.
Now, you don't just read software programs when they spit out reports, do you?
No.
As an analyst, as one of the leaders of Cellebrite, do you have a history of being a researcher?
Yes, I do.
A history of study?
Yes.
Have you written reports and papers for people to learn?
I've written multiple blogs, done multiple presentations, webinars. Some of my blog posts have become peer-reviewed articles.
Okay. Is it sufficient to simply look at a report that is generated by Cellebrite or Axiom or any other service and make conclusions just on the report?
I don't believe it is, no.
Why do you think that's imprudent?
Sorry?
Why do you think that is not prudent to simply rely on a report?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to allow him to answer.
The tools are very good at surfacing data, but I believe it's up to the examiner to understand what that data means and to provide context to the information which the tool itself can't give.
And when you were considering the hash value and determining whether or not you thought there was anything wrong with the data, aside from the hash value, how do you do that?
How do I do
How
what?
do you make a determination whether or not this has integrity, the data hasn't been tampered with, so to speak?
Okay. So, notwithstanding the hash value, I'd be looking for issues with the data that don't make sense. In this particular case, there was lots of data points that all appeared to work together. Like you would see one artifact change in one database and an artifact would change somewhere else. And it all just made perfect sense in how it was functioning. That kind of leads you to believe that it's not been tampered with, or the person tampering with it did an exceptional job to be able to cover all of these different tracks and make it undetectable.
Did you try to summarize that perspective in the part of the report that wasn't read to you on examination?
I did.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty if there was any data integrity issues in the information you reviewed?
I don't believe there was any.
It was characterized on examination there was a dispute about the time origin of the search, how long to die in cold. Do you remember being asked the question about a dispute?
Yes.
Have you, in your studies and in your position, is there any viable dispute in the forensic data scientific community about that issue?
I don't believe there is anymore.
Now, you got involved in this case because you received a complaint from a consumer.
I received a question from a consumer, yes.
And you attempted to resolve that?
Correct.
Sustained is
Other than that source, have you received any information, feedback, opinions that would make this issue in any way a dispute?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow that.
I'm sorry, could you rephrase the question?
Other than that one person, that one consumer, have you received any information in the forensic community which you're part of?
Oh.
Any data, any information that would suggest that your conclusions are in dispute?
Yeah, I received a very similar question from an examiner in Europe. Fairly similar circumstances with a case and with a timestamp that didn't make sense, that was originating from the same database. I applied the same logic and theory to his question, and he confirmed it solved the issue for him. It all made sense then.
And since then, has in your world, academic and research world, forensic data science, other than the person who originally raised the question, has there been any dispute brought to you by anybody about your conclusions about when the search actually happened?
No. If anything, I've heard people who have confirmed the research that I did.
Do you know Jessica Hyde?
I do.
Is she well known in the forensic community?
She is.
You were asked questions about your law enforcement background and the fact that Cellebrite is used as a forensic tool oftentimes by law enforcement.
Yes.
Did you go into your company's software and change it to accommodate law enforcement?
No, definitely not.
Would you ever do such a thing?
No.
Why wouldn't you do something like that?
Aside from being unethical to change the data in that way, this is an artifact that is easily validated by any examiner. And if I was to tamper it for the purposes of changing the outcome of a case, it would be detected by all of our customers immediately and would destroy the reputation of Cellebrite, which I've got no intention of doing.
Before a prior proceeding, the printout from the software, when it was showing the timestamp of the Safari search, was it labeled something in particular before?
The Cellebrite search
Yes.
was labeled last visited time.
Last what?
Last visited time.
And when it was labeled last visited time, did it show 227 on the report?
It did.
Cellebrite, after research and consideration, removed that label?
We removed the timestamp when we determined that it was not relevant to the last time that that page was visited.
Why was it important to remove that timestamp from the program and the software?
It was clearly causing confusion.
Does the company have concerns when consumers are confused about information?
Of course, yes.
Do companies have concerns if a consumer tries to manipulate the use of that information?
Of course.
Are companies concerned that a label could be misleading for somebody who may not have a higher level of experience?
Yes.
When that decision was made to change that for clarification, did you make that solely by yourself?
No, I did not.
Who do you consult with, and who's part of that decision process?
So again, after my research, I passed the results of my research to the forensic research group. This is a team based at Cellebrite whose sole job is to do the research, do the coding to make sure that what we're giving to customers is correct. They spent some time validating the research that I did, verifying that my research was correct, and then they were responsible for making the change based on the updated research.
It was suggested that a separate software program, not the company you work for, Cellebrite, but Axiom, reflects this search as deleted. That's not entirely accurate, is it?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained is to form.
Running an Axiom program, would it reflect this search as deleted?
Yes, and it is a deleted search.
Does it have a label on it?
It does.
Is that carved?
Yes, it would be.
Now, are you familiar with the Axiom artifact reference guide when it talks about the dangers of relying on the timestamp?
I'm not familiar with it referencing dangers, but I'm aware of the document.
Are you aware of the reference guide when it talks about Safari suspended state tabs
Yes.
and offers that since these are local tab states, results from this artifact may contain an earlier date and time compared to the results in the Safari history artifact if iCloud Safari synchronization?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Are you aware of the reference guide?
I am.
Are you aware that it cautions that a timestamp can be misinterpreted?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Sir, when you came to your opinion that the search for how long to die in the cold at 6:23 and 6:24 in the morning of January 29, 2022, was the time that they were actually inputted, not 2:27. In forming your opinion, did you consider both Cellebrite and Axiom software?
I did.
Did you consider other tools as well?
Yes, my own.
And tell us a little bit about your own tool.
Again, this is a tool I've been writing for approximately 5 or 6 years now. Partially for fun, partially for research purposes. And it's a tool I make available to other examiners globally.
And sir, when you were trying to examine these searches that in your opinion were 6:23 and 6:24 a.m., did you ever try to test it yourself and actually take a phone so you could either prove or disprove to yourself that that earlier timestamp didn't mean it was the time that it was searched?
Oh, definitely. Yes. That's the kind of thing I do all the time when verifying artifacts.
And in your opinion, is that helpful in understanding how a timestamp earlier could relate to a later search?
Exactly. Very helpful.
Would you be willing to do a live demonstration for us on the screen and show us how that works?
Yes.
Okay. How long would that take?
Probably about 5 minutes.
Okay. Could you show us?
Of course.
Re-report, Your Honor.
Okay. Looks like a good place to take our lunch and recess. 45 minutes. Okay. Mr. Wiffin, I'm going to ask you to read the report, but the rest of us are in recess.
Please rise to the jury. Please leave no on the chairs. Thank you.